Could you tackle television's toughest quiz? John McAllister did and became the superperson of 1981.
Well, if you think you have the qualities to end up in one of these contestants' chairs, now's your chance to prove it. Just send off immediately for one of these preliminary test papers and you could end up on the programme. The address is the Krypton Factor, Granada Television, Manchester, M60 9EA.
The things of a woman are important to me, like Elle by Lanteric, my very feminine fragrance, because I like to express my freedom and independence in a very feminine way. It's nice to be independent. It's very nice to be loved.
Elle by Lanteric, a very feminine fragrance.
I'd like to demonstrate the advantages of new Alcan foil in wrapping difficult birds. Their foil as you know it. Thank you, Emu. And now today's 25% stronger foil, Alcan Diamond. Years of research have made it significantly stronger and even easier to use. So, there you are, ladies. Proof positive that a new Alcan Diamond copes with difficult birds and brings out their full flavour in the oven.
Are we going to the party now, Mummy?
As soon as I've finished the washing up, darling.
Can the good fairy help you?
The good fairy is helping me. My fairy liquid.
Can your fairy grant wishes?
Oh, yes. It gives me all the gentle bubbles I could wish for. They're so kind to my hands.
But can it make the washing up disappear?
Of course it can. Just watch this dried-on egg disappear. There.
It's magic.
And it helps keep my hands soft.
Fairies like soft hands.
So do fairies' mummies. And green fairy liquid.
At Fine Fare, we're helping you to better shopping with better prices. So we offer cheaper groceries every week. We have yellow packs, Britain's lowest priced range. And now, every week until Christmas, we have our Takeaway 10, with such amazing prices as our yellow pack turkeys for 47 pence per pound, Mrs. Peake's Christmas pudding for 89 pence, Rover assorted biscuits for £1.65. That's how Fine Fare are helping you to better shopping.
The Norweb Manweb Spotlight picks out some of our most exciting Christmas gift bargains. Like this elegant Russell Hobbs filter coffee maker, only £19.95. Who wouldn't appreciate the Russell Hobbs Futura kettle, only £22.95? Or the luxury of the Russell Hobbs Chelsea tea maker, just £39.50. And at £29.95, this Russell Hobbs filter fryer is a real gift. Spotlight bargains. See them at Norweb and Manweb now.
Patrick, 5th Earl of Lichfield, is also a professional photographer. Even when he's not working, he likes to keep his hand in. With the Olympus XA2.
It's so fast it doesn't miss a shot. There's no lens cap or case. Just slide back the cover and shoot. The XA2 has a 35mm Zico lens, simple focusing, automatic exposure, and a flash unit.
The Olympus XA2, what a pro uses when he's not taking pictures.
You're in for a big surprise at Toy and Hobby. Look at these prices. Race and Chase at $25.95. Active Cindy at $2.99. Monopoly at $2.95. Buckaroo, $2.50. If that doesn't convince you our prices are low, nothing will. Toy and Hobby at Wigan, Stockport, St Helens and Chester. Open late Thursday and Friday till 8.
Your grandparents can be trusted, Amajit. They have chosen well.
I understand what you're saying, Mummy, but I must be allowed to make my own mistakes. That's what life is about.
No, Amajit, that is not what life is about. It is about not making mistakes.
500 years of tradition behind you, of history, of religion. And the young man you are going to marry is part of that tradition. And a very fine example of it.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
There's so many things. I don't know where to begin.
Then may I ask you something?
Yes?
Do you really want to get married?
The dramatised documentary An Arranged Marriage, tonight at 10:30 here on ITV.
This is Granada. Now from ITN, the news at 10.
Are killed in Corsica's hills. The government approves juggernauts, backbenchers don't. The BBC television license goes up to £46. The debris of war in El Salvador. And John Joe O'Neill comes back at 5-4 favourite. Good evening. 178 people were killed when their plane crashed into a mountainside in Corsica this morning. The plane, a DC-9, was carrying Yugoslav holidaymakers on a day trip to the island. It was on a 90-minute flight from Ljubljana in northern Yugoslavia. It crashed in thick cloud minutes before it was due to arrive at Ajaccio airport. There were no survivors. Ajaccio airport is blacklisted by the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations as one of the most dangerous in Europe. David Smith at ITN analyzes the worst air crash this year.
This is the DC-9 which crashed. It was bought by the Yugoslav charter company in Adria only in August. Early this morning it left Ljubljana in northern Yugoslavia. For the 178 people on board, 3 of them babies, it was a one-day excursion to Corsica, their way of celebrating a national holiday. They were just a few minutes away from touchdown at Ajaccio airport when the DC-9 crashed. Ajaccio airport has its blacklisting because of its difficult approach if the conditions are bad. On a good day, the flight path would be in from the sea round the southwest coast. But if the wind dictates otherwise, as it did today, the approach is made over the mountains to the east of the city. The British Pilots Association says these mountains form a depression of peaks, shaped like a cup, surrounding an incoming flight. Mountains to the west, to the north and the east, the airport to the south. Shortly before 9 this morning, there was a distress call, then silence. The plane had crashed straight into the mountains. It was nearly 4 hours before rescue teams could reach the scene. The only way was by helicopter and then on foot. Stretchers and blankets at the ready. But there was really no hope of survivors. Bad weather seems to be the most likely cause. The plane only just cleared 2 nearby villages, and the people there report a heavy storm and winds of up to 60 miles an hour this morning. The same eyewitnesses said the plane was flying at 300 feet as it lost height. The mountain into which it crashed stands at 3,000 feet. Tonight, the local police sealed off the area around the wreckage while they tried to recover the remains of victims, scattered over hundreds of yards on the mountainside. Tomorrow, the search will begin for the flight recorder, the main hope of explaining this, the worst air crash this year. For the Yugoslav airline, it is the second major disaster in 5 years. In September 1976, another DC-9 belonging to Inex Adria collided with a British Airways Trident mid-air over Zagreb, killing all 176 people on board the 2 planes.
A major political row has broken out over government plans to allow heavier lorries on Britain's roads early in the new year. The proposals announced by Transport Secretary Mr Howell in a white paper published today include raising the maximum weight of lorries from 32.5 to 40 tonnes, giving the go-ahead for 4 new bypasses to cope with the heavier vehicles. The white paper says lorries, although heavier, will not be bigger and says there'll be 10,000 fewer on the roads because they can carry more weight. In the end, the report says Britain will save £150 million. This report from Sarah Cullen.
The department say these new lorries will be cleaner, quieter and more efficient. Instead of the conventional double rear axle, the 40-ton lorry has a third axle to spread the load. The government says this will help reduce road damage by 5%. Although they're far heavier than the present maximum, that's the white lorry, they're only inches bigger. But the proposals have already raised shouts of protest, particularly from MPs with rural constituencies who say things are already bad enough, without 40-tonners rumbling through what used to be sleepy villages. Although the white paper promises greater priority for bypasses, the lorries would be on the roads before many of these could be completed. And roads are already showing the strain from present traffic. This feeder link between London's Blackwall Tunnel and the main south coast routes shows the familiar symptoms. Conservationists claim the new lorries will cost the country millions, over £1,000 million for strengthening bridges alone. Time has already run out for some of the older bridges. This one's cracked and will have to be replaced. So if the roads can't cope with the traffic we've already got, what will heavy lorries do to them?
Now we have letters and files of industrialists write to us and say if we could fill our lorries instead of trailing them around 20% empty, we could certainly ship our goods with fewer lorries. Fewer lorries with a wider spread of the axle weights underneath means that the damage on the roads is in no way worse, and with fewer lorries it's actually better. So this is a gain, you see.
Mr Howell's decision to allow heavier lorries sparked off an immediate revolt among backbench Conservative MPs. So strong is the resentment at what some of them see as the insensitivity of today's announcement that there's a strong chance the new regulations will be defeated. The Backbench Transport Committee of Conservative MPs repeatedly warned Mr Howell not to go ahead. One senior Conservative predicted tonight the new 40-ton limit hadn't got a cat in hell's chance of getting through. The MP for Canterbury, Mr David Crouch, told Mr Howell directly he would vote against him. "I just do not believe these lorries will not be bigger, heftier and more dangerous," he said. Many Tory constituencies already have vociferous groups protesting at the noise and damage caused by lorries. Former Transport Minister Mr John Payton warned the announcement would not, as he said, please people who pushed prams through villages. The government is already in a mess over the proposal for referendums in local rate increases, unable to get it through the Commons. And this could be a similar misjudgment. Glyn Mathias, News at 10, Westminster.
The cost of a colour television licence for the BBC goes up by £12 at midnight, from £34 to £46. A black and white licence will be £15. That's a rise of £3. The Home Secretary, Mr Whitelaw, told the Commons the new fees will be pegged for 3 years, and there'll be easier ways to pay, a scheme for credit cards and a monthly instalment plan, or post office payment. The BBC say they're disappointed. They wanted a £50 licence. The Shadow Home Secretary, Mr Roy Hattersley, said Labour doesn't support the increases. It wants concessions for pensioners and the chronically sick. He suggested that hotels, who need only one licence, however many sets they have, should pay a higher fee. Mr Whitelaw replied that free licences for pensioners would mean everyone else paying £70. Mr Hugh Faulkner, Director of Help the Aged, said pensioners have been dealt a savage blow. Our industrial editor, Giles Smith, has been assessing today's increase.
The BBC's old £34 licence was the 12th lowest of 13 European countries. The rise takes it about halfway up the league. But the BBC claim they give a wider and better service than the others, and that if they hadn't got the rise, there would have to have been more repeats, opera and serious music would have to have been cut, and replacement of very old equipment would have been further postponed. Because they haven't got all they wanted, they say there'll still have to be some cuts. But even today, they claim, if you account for inflation, the licence is 15% less than it was 10 years ago. But isn't £46 a lot of money, particularly for pensioners?
I think this is a very real problem. I think I must say that with regard to pensioners, in real terms, the licence has not become a larger share of the pension over the years. Everything has become a smaller share of the pension. But nonetheless, it's a lot to find. And that's why we are really delighted that they're going to bring in the instalment system, because we believe that, or whatever the difficulties may be, that if people can put down small amounts over the post office counter every month, that clearly is going to make it easier for them to pay the licence.
In Northern Ireland, an inquest jury has decided that the 10 Republican hunger strikers at the Maze prison died from self-imposed starvation. And in Belfast, Constable William Coulter was buried today with full police honours, 3 days after being killed by a booby-trap bomb. Jeremy Hans reports.
Constable Coulter had only completed his police training a month ago. His wife, who was expecting their first child at Christmas, stayed inside their home in the Protestant Glencairn Crescent as the 23-year-old murdered man's family, friends and colleagues carried him through Woodvale and down the Shankill Road towards the cemetery on the other side of the city. One of the men injured in the blast that killed Mr. Coulter insisted on walking painfully behind the coffin. Democratic Unionist Party leader Ian Paisley was among a crowd of over 1,000 mourners in the procession. The route had to be changed when the police and army moved in to check for suspected bombs along the way. But the cortege still had to pass the spot where Mr. Coulter died whilst changing from one police Land Rover to another on Friday night outside the Republican Unity Flats.
Police in the West Midlands have been reconstructing the last journey of the murdered Sutton Coldfield schoolboy John Haddon. The boy was 13. Today, in the hunt for his killer, one of his classmates, Ben, volunteered to retrace John's last bicycle ride because he's the same age and looks similar to the murdered boy.